Sometimes an entire life can change in just 1 minute. Imagine this. You're 23 years old. You're the youngest MVP in NBA history. The whole world believes you're destined to become the new face of the league. Championships, records, and a place among the greatest players of all time seem inevitable. There's just over a minute left in the game. Your team has a comfortable lead. The outcome has already been decided. You make a routine drive to the basket, the same move you've made thousands of times before. You jump, you land, and in that instant, everything changes. One torn ligament didn't just change Derrick Rose's career, it changed the history of the NBA. To this day, many believe that on that night, basketball lost one of the greatest players it never got to see. Today, we're going to tell the story of the man who was faster than everyone else, until fate decided to stop him. Derrick Rose was born and raised in one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Chicago. He grew up without a father. His mother worked tirelessly to support the family, while his older brothers helped however they could. At times, as many as 13 people lived under the same roof. His older brothers were involved in drugs and street life, but they understood that Derrick had a real chance to escape that world. They did everything they could to keep him away from crime and made sure basketball became his only obsession. Rose wasn't some basketball prodigy from the moment he was born. He simply spent every day playing on the outdoor courts of Chicago, where he had to compete against older, stronger players. Those games taught him not to fear contact, to embrace physical play, and to finish incredible drives through defenders. Even back then, people could tell he was different. Before long, Derrick enrolled at Simeon Career Academy, where he quickly became the leader of the team. Under his leadership, the school won back-to-back state championships, and Rose established himself as one of the best high school basketball players in the country. After high school, nearly every top college program wanted him. But he chose the University of Memphis because of head coach John Calipari, who had built a reputation for preparing players for the NBA. That decision proved to be the right one. In his first and only season at Memphis, Rose led the Tigers to the NCAA Final Four. They came within one win of a national championship, but Memphis fell in overtime in the title game. Despite the heartbreaking loss, Rose had an outstanding season and cemented his status as one of the nation's top young prospects. It seemed like nothing could stop him from becoming the #1 overall pick. But shortly before the NBA draft, controversy struck. Reports surfaced claiming that someone else may have taken Rose's SAT exam. As a result, the NCAA later vacated Memphis's entire season. Even so, NBA teams barely changed their opinion of him. Everyone knew that Derrick's basketball talent couldn't be measured by a college entrance exam. He had already proven on the court that he deserved to be the first overall pick. Then came the 2008 NBA draft. The Chicago Bulls, Rose's hometown team, had only a 1.7% chance of winning the draft lottery. Then the impossible happened. Chicago won the lottery and earned the first overall pick. The decision was an easy one. The Bulls selected their hometown hero with the #1 overall pick. For the city, it was a special moment. A kid who had grown up on the tough streets of Chicago's South Side was coming home as the franchise's greatest hope. The player who was expected to bring the Bulls back to glory after the era of Michael Jordan. And just like that, Derrick Rose made it to the NBA. His rookie season was already a huge success. Despite being a first-year player, he was never afraid to take over games. He was incredibly athletic, and his explosive first step allowed him to blow past almost any defender in the league. On top of that, he had unbelievable leaping ability. In his debut season, Rose averaged nearly 17 points per game, an incredible number for a rookie. As a result, he won the Rookie of the Year award almost unanimously. To everyone's surprise, the rookie also led the Chicago Bulls to the playoffs. In the very first round, they faced the defending champions, the Boston Celtics. But Derrick Rose wasn't intimidated in the slightest. In his very first playoff game, he exploded for 36 points, tying the record for the highest-scoring playoff debut in NBA history. He showed the entire league that he belonged on the biggest stage, proving he feared no one and that he had an incredibly bright future ahead of him. By his second season, Rose had taken another huge step forward. He was now averaging 21 points per game and earned his first NBA All-Star selection. More importantly, he had become the unquestioned leader of the Chicago Bulls, with almost every offensive possession running through him. Then came the 2010-11 season. The Bulls hired Tom Thibodeau as their new head coach. His philosophy was built around discipline and elite defense. The results were immediate. Chicago became the best defensive team in the NBA, won 62 games, finished with the league's best regular season record, and entered the playoffs as one of the championship favorites. In just his third NBA season, Derrick Rose was putting up incredible numbers, averaging 25 points and 7 assists per game. The Bulls eventually reached the Eastern Conference Finals, where they faced the Miami Heat and their legendary Big Three, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. Unfortunately, Chicago came up just short of reaching the NBA Finals. But even in defeat, Rose proved that he could go toe-to-toe with the best and most experienced players in the league. Then came the award he had truly earned. Rose received 113 first-place votes, and at just 22 years old, became the youngest MVP in NBA history. It was absolutely unbelievable. A player in only his third NBA season had already become the youngest, most valuable player the league had ever seen. It wasn't just a historic moment, it was a sensation for the entire NBA and especially for the city of Chicago. But unfortunately, after every bright chapter comes a dark one, and Derrick Rose was no exception. And that's when the darkest chapter of Derrick Rose's career began. At first, everything seemed to be going well. The Bulls had another strong regular season, comfortably secured a playoff spot, and Rose continued putting up impressive numbers. Then came the first round of the playoffs against the Philadelphia 76ers. Game 1 was practically over. Chicago had built a comfortable lead, and with just over a minute left, the outcome was all but decided. But head coach Tom Thibodeau kept his starters on the floor. He was known for rarely giving his stars any rest, and this decision would become one of the biggest turning points in NBA history. Then came what looked like the most ordinary basketball play. Rose brought the ball up the floor, attacked the basket, and made one of his signature drives to the rim. As he came down from the jump, his left knee gave out. He collapsed to the floor immediately. One look at his face told everyone that something was terribly wrong. Soon after, the doctors confirmed the worst possible diagnosis, a torn ACL. It was the most devastating injury of his career. What made it even more heartbreaking was that the game had already been won. There was no reason for him to still be on the court. But what happened had happened, and there was no way to change it. Rose had just completed the best season of his life. He was at the peak of his career, the reigning NBA MVP, only 23 years old, and leading his team in the pursuit of a championship. But injuries don't spare anyone. That single injury changed far more than just one season. It changed Derrick Rose's entire career. He lost the explosive speed and athleticism that had made him almost impossible to defend. Or maybe he never truly lost those abilities. Maybe, after such a devastating injury, he was simply afraid to trust his body the way he once had. Either way, after that night, basketball would never see the same Derrick Rose again. The MVP version of Derrick Rose was gone forever. And then came a full year without basketball. A major surgery, a long and grueling rehabilitation. Finally, Derrick Rose returned to the court. Fans had been waiting for this moment for months. The media, basketball fans, and everyone who loved the game hoped they were about to see the return of the MVP Derrick Rose. But from the very first games, it was clear that something had changed. He played more cautiously. He wasn't as confident as before and avoided physical contact whenever possible, even though he still wasn't afraid to attack the basket. After all, he was only 24 years old. But you could already see that his vertical wasn't the same. His explosive first step wasn't the same either. Still, he refused to give up. He continued putting up solid numbers, even if they weren't anywhere near what they used to be. Then disaster struck once again. Rose suffered another serious injury, a torn meniscus, another surgery, another long rehabilitation. From that point on, his numbers gradually declined, and the loss of his explosive speed became impossible to ignore. He no longer trusted his own body. Instead of attacking the rim fearlessly, he relied more on passing and jump shots, avoiding unnecessary contact whenever he could. Then came what was probably the hardest moment for Derrick Rose's fans. The Chicago Bulls traded their former MVP. The organization had come to the conclusion that the old Derrick Rose wasn't coming back, so they decided it was time to move on. For Derrick, it was an incredibly painful moment, and it hurt the fans just as much. Chicago wasn't just another city, it was home. He truly believed he would return to his MVP form there. Unfortunately, the front office saw things differently. That trade marked the beginning of his journey with the New York Knicks. He was still in solid shape, but by now he had completely changed the way he played. Instead of relying on athleticism, he leaned on experience, skill, and basketball IQ. He put together a respectable season, and for a moment, it looked like his career was finally getting back on track. But once again, bad luck struck. He tore his meniscus again. Another surgery, another lengthy recovery. After that, Rose moved from team to team, and more people began to believe that the old Derrick Rose was gone forever, that he was now simply a veteran trying to finish out his career. But it was at that very moment that the darkest chapter of Derrick Rose's story finally began to come to an end. He signed with the Minnesota Timberwolves. At this point, almost no one wanted to sign Derrick Rose anymore. He was seen as an injury-prone player who could no longer produce the kind of stats he once did. But then came an offer from his former coach, Tom Thibodeau. This time, he was the head coach of the Minnesota Timberwolves. And of course, Derrick Rose didn't turn down the opportunity. It was another chance to prove that he could still play at a high level. By now, he had completely changed his style of play. He no longer relied on explosive athleticism, but instead focused on experience, basketball IQ, and reading defenses. He had become a true veteran, someone who not only contributed on the court, but also guided younger players and shared his experience with them. But then something incredible happened. Many people call this game his second prime. It was the game of his life. Nobody expected it. It was a regular season game against the Utah Jazz. But that night, something unbelievable happened with Derrick Rose. He started hitting almost every shot, one after another. He began finishing his signature drives again, the same ones that once amazed the entire league during his MVP years. For one night, it felt like he had become that young MVP Derrick Rose all over again. And then he dropped 50 points, his career high. An incredibly high shooting percentage, key assists, and even a game-winning block on the final possession. After the final buzzer, Derrick Rose couldn't hold back his emotions. He broke down in tears on the court, while the fans stood up and gave him a standing ovation. After the game, he gave one of the most emotional interviews in NBA history. Rose thanked everyone who never stopped believing in him. He spoke about his long and painful journey, how after being the best player in the league, he had to go through endless injuries, surgeries, and doubts just to feel like a real basketball player again. And he admitted that this game meant everything to him. After Minnesota, he continued to contribute to other teams. He played for Detroit, then returned to New York, and later joined Memphis. He was no longer a superstar, but a veteran who shared his experience with younger players, came off the bench, and still delivered important points for his teams. Derrick Rose is not just a story of great talent, it is a story of unbelievable resilience. He broke down many times, but every single time he found the strength to get back up and keep moving forward. After such devastating injuries, most players would have ended their careers. But Derrick went through multiple serious surgeries and still refused to give up. He is a man with extraordinary mental strength. Maybe the world never saw the best version of Derrick Rose, But even without championship rings, his name will forever remain one of the most beloved and most tragic in NBA history.